Hey everyone, quick time check. It's about 2:45 p.m. now, which means we're ready for yet another informative webinar. Now, you know by now that the luxury property market has experienced a surge in buying in 2021, and it actually doesn't look like it's going to stop anytime soon. But who are these buyers and what exactly are they looking for? Well, stay tuned to find out in this next session presented by Juyong, Senior Executive Officer from Huttons Asia, with a project feature on the Atelier. Juyong plays a pivotal role in matters relating to company sustainability, project development, and corporate finance. And he's also responsible for the advancement of PropTech investments outside the company, and also involved in various equity deals and engages in the corporate and financial due diligence for such investments. Let's welcome Juyong.
So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our series of the exceptional homes presented by CNA Luxury and Property Guru. I'm from Huttons. My name is Mr. Juyong. I'm a Senior Executive Officer. Okay, in short, you can call me JY. Along with me, I have my colleague, Mr. John Liu. He's a Division Director and also a Project IC for certain luxury projects in the core central region of Singapore. Today, we are here to present to you about the luxury market, touch a bit about the overview of what we think the market is at this point of time. At the same time, we'll try our best to make it a little more educational. So both in terms of the data point of view and of course, how things are planned in Singapore in terms of how landed properties also are planned in Singapore. This one will be on the GCB market or the Good Class Bungalow market. All right, so this is a little disclaimer that we have. We will do our best to ensure the accuracy of the information and ensure that what's provided to you is up to date also. All right, so straight into the agenda itself. So introduction, I did one just now, but the next segment that we'll go into also is the Good Class Bungalow in terms of the landed Good Class Bungalows segment. So Good Class Bungalows are very exclusive landed properties that are few and far between. They are very hard to come by and usually they're very large in size. So we'll go through the concept of how Good Class Bungalows are formed in terms of what are the requirements for Good Class Bungalows. How is the market doing? Who are the individuals buying into this? And what we feel moving forward, how the market will stand. At the same time, we will also touch on the primary market in terms of the non-landed residential primary market. Data is quite readily available, and we'll touch a bit on the demand and supply that we see at this point of time. Historical data will be taken into account also, and we'll give a view in terms of the price trending and what we view the market in terms of the next couple of months. And last but not least, there will be a project showcase in which we will introduce a project that we feel fits the bill of what is something that may be attractive in today's market. Bear with us. If you have any questions, do put it in the chat box. We'll do our best to answer them as best we can also. All right, so I'll go straight into it. First is Good Class Bungalows, right? So Good Class Bungalows is synonymous with ultra luxury. It's synonymous with huge living rooms, high ceiling, huge lawns. And so what exactly are Good Class Bungalows? All right, to put it into a broad spectrum of things, Good Class Bungalows, right, are bungalows of a certain size, minimum size, located in designated GCB areas. So in the land planning itself, these areas are actually carved out to be Good Class Bungalow zones. And in Singapore, there are only 39 of such areas. And such areas are extremely exclusive. Usually they're located in the center of Singapore, or at least in the central area of Singapore. And they are even then, they are actually tiering itself. So Good Class Bungalow Zone 1, Zone 2, Zone 3, that is more of the industry tiering, of which we actually grade what are very exclusive GCB areas, and of course, the more up-and-coming areas also. There are some requirements for GCB. Usually, they are 1,400 square meters and above, and this is usually, not all the time. Site coverage is around about 40% or so, and the width and the depth, there is a requirement. But there are many variations because look at big houses in Singapore. Some of them have extremely long driveways, some are odd shaped, some are triangular shaped. So there are many versions of land because real estate is never unique. It's always very catered to the individual, and it's always as itself alone. So you can't divide it in the sense that they are all exactly the same. So Good Class Bungalows is exactly the same thing. The land shape is different, the undulation of the land is different, whether you're on high ground or low ground, everything is very different. Therefore, it's also a very rare asset class because And if I'm not wrong, there are about 2,700, 2,800 units in Singapore, and this constitutes about 3.8% of the landed residential units. But it's so rare because of all the stringent requirements and the large size that it requires. So that's an overview of actually what good class bungalows are. Okay, so I'll actually go a little bit more in detail. What are GCB areas? So there are 39 such areas. Actually, we put them on the right-hand side. This data was obtained from URA. Some of them, most of them are in the center. However, you do see some on the outskirts, like Chestnut area. If you look at Upper Thomson, there's also Windsor Park area. These areas are very exclusive also, but in terms of the proximity to the center of Singapore, it's a bit further out. Nonetheless, there's still tiering inside. Industry market norms is that the top tier would be maybe in Nassim area, followed by the others around it itself. So GCB areas, in terms of the supply, very rare, and therefore it's a very prized possession. The next thing here is the design requirements for GCBs. So on paper, GCBs require a minimum of maybe 1,400 square meters. That's around about 15,000 square feet or so. And they require a plot width of 18.5, plot depth of 30 meters, but not all the time it applies. So we do see GCBs that are a bit smaller, maybe about 10 plus thousand square feet within the GCB areas. And these are also, to a certain extent, considered GCBs. Why so? Because of this variation. Sometimes when you subdivide land, it's very hard to ensure that everybody is at least of that size. Sometimes you have a certain easement of a driveway, you have different planning requirements on site, and therefore the shape and the size of the land comes into play, and the variations also come into play. So actually there's one common misconception that we've heard about many times. Let's say if you have a plot of land, 40,000 square feet or maybe even 50,000 square feet, is this considered a GCB? Yes, if it's in the GCB area. So if it's out of the area, it's also not considered a GCB, even though it meets the size requirements, the plot depth requirements, etc. So therefore, GCBs itself, they are very, very, very attractive in that sense. All right. So let me talk a bit about the transaction volume. GCBs in recent times, or at least in the news itself, we always hear it's a hot product. Transaction volume is increasingly so-called, in terms of the volume is going up, up, and up. And if you put it on a chart, we can actually look at the total value of deals. So the value of deals is represented by the orange line over here. As you can see, from 2015 all the way until maybe 2021, and it's only 9 months in 2021. The value of deal is valued around maybe around $2.5 billion. So it is far outpacing the transaction volume in the past that we see, which is always hovering around 1+ billion. But in addition to that, the number of deals also increased. So in the past, maybe 30, 40 transactions per year. Currently, we are seeing in this day and age, 9 months up to end of September 2021, close to 70, 80 transactions. And that is a marked increase given the situation, or at least the pandemic situation that we are in. I would say endemic now, actually. All right. And if we really dial back down to the individual so-called price point, in the past, GCBs go for around maybe from 2015, 20 over million, 21, sometimes it rises 23, 24, 25 million, all the way. But today, we see it at a transaction at around $30 million. Other maybe real estate agencies or real estate research houses, they may use land cost as a version of explaining this to you. However, we are trying to refrain from doing that because to us, maybe the quantum of transaction is important. GCBs itself, nowadays, they come in many shapes and sizes. When we value land, most of the time we take the land itself plus the actual built up, means the building. In recent times, building costs has gone up tremendously. And the range of which GCBs are being built, in terms of the construction, they can vary widely also depending on the finishes being used. So to each his own in designing the house. So therefore, valuing land as a base itself, sometimes we may overestimate or underestimate the actual cost of the house. Nowadays, if you can get construction costs and maybe between, for GCBs of high range, 600 over to maybe 1,000 per square foot, it's the market norm. So assuming a 10,000 square feet house, any construction cost between 6 to 10 million, it's very normal. And if you add 6 to 10 million to a land of maybe 15 million, you can actually distort the value quite a bit. And therefore, we use overall, as in transaction dollar cents, to average this out. So from 2015 to 2021, the dollar, it has went up about 40% in terms of each transacted GCB units, whether new, whether old, whether bare land, etc. Yeah. All right. We had to borrow this chart from our sister company Severals, but it was published in the Business Times also. So if we look at GCB performance as an entity itself over a period of time from maybe 2004 up to 2020, index at 2004. So it means 2004 is my index point. The prices have gone up way more, or at least very much more than other landed properties also, and other non-landed properties. So from this, we can actually tell that GCBs, over a period of a longer period of time, they actually hold their value quite well. In terms of the appreciation, yes, there will be up market and down markets. It's also quite strong. And the demand pool remains strong. And I talk about two parts, right? Usually we talk about demand and supply of things. From a demand point of view, as you can see in the previous slide, transactions are going up, transaction volume is healthy. From the supply point of view, in order to arrive at the price index, supply is limited because, like we mentioned earlier, 39 designated GCP areas, a lot of planning requirements in terms of the size requirements. Supply is quite fixed and demand is getting stronger, growing along with the wealth of the country itself. So therefore, we also arrive at why the price index is rather resilient in terms of the pricing of GCPs in Singapore. So versus private residential properties, they actually outperform them. And these are some of the notable transactions that we see in the market. We see Grab CEOs, Secret Lab CEOs, Razors, founder also, and TikTok CEOs buying GCBs as a price asset. And if you notice a trend, these so-called GCBs that were transacted and published in the newspaper, they are relatively from individuals that have made their wealth in recent times in terms of the technology front. So what I see this is not as making the money and then buying a trophies statement piece in terms of a trophy house. That's my opinion of things. It's more of translating the wealth from maybe their business and translating it into a real asset itself, right? So they are moving their finances, moving their entire portfolio, a certain element of it from their business to real estate. So from this angle, I would guess in terms of intuition, the real estate from this is a rather resilient asset that even individuals who are very savvy on the business front are putting money to preserve their wealth. We've seen from, as you can see, the bottom side, the bottom right-hand article also down here, it's not just individuals that are buying, it's also family wealth that's going into GCPs. So broad spectrum of things, business owners, top executives, families are coming into play. And one thing that we also notice is that new citizens are coming into the market. New citizens, that means maybe foreigners, when they come into Singapore, they're not able to buy land. So when they get their citizenship, they thereafter purchase large GCBs. It's not, I wouldn't say it's not possible for foreigners to buy land. It's very hard for them to buy land. It's more of they have to go through the LDAU approval. It takes a long period of time. Recent times, I think only James Dyson got it for GCBs. Some of them are under the radar, so we may not be able to pick them up. Yeah. So in conclusion about Good Class Bungalows, GCB is a price asset that attracts the top echelons of the business communities, whether it's the business families, top executives, business owners, equity owners. They also attract new citizens. Supply is very limited because of the designated areas, the size restrictions in terms of the minimum size it must hit. And in terms of subdivision of GCB plots, you need a very big plot in order to subdivide. So it's rare, and they do come about once in a while, but they're quite rare. Demand pool is increasing. In recent times, a lot of liquidity in the market. Interest rates are at an all-time low, or at least they may have increased a little bit in the past few months, but nonetheless, it's still very low compared to in the past. And Singapore's attractiveness to new citizens. Now, Singapore is such an attractive business hub itself. We draw in new people, we draw in wealth, we bring wealth to the existing business families itself and individuals like top executives. So this demand pool is there, given a fixed supply. Historically speaking, it results in something that we see in terms of price sustainability. So from a long-term perspective, it's a good or a rather good wealth preservation tool. So in essence, that's the whole story of GCBs. They're very attractive, very limited supply. Demand is increasing given the country's wealth also. Singapore's wealth is growing. Therefore, adding to that, it results in a quite sustainable price increment historically over a period of time. And also, therefore, it acts as a very good wealth preservation tool. All right, so I hope that suffices in terms of a good overview of the GCB market. The next thing we'll talk about is the non-landed residential market. Let me get a sip of water first. Sorry, I kind of bullet trained through that, but I hope it gives you a good understanding of the local GCB market. All right, next thing, non-landed residential. We will focus primarily on the core central region. We want to capture as much of an audience as we can. So I will not talk specifically about $70 million deals in terms of the large floor plate, non-landed residential. I'll talk about houses that are also within the affordable range, but considered the luxury segment of it because they're located in very premium areas. So we'll focus our segment of area, or at least our segmentizing into the core central region, and then we branch out and we'll talk about certain notable transactions. All right, so back to basics. Usually I always use this as a fine-tuned marker to see how we actually angle or how we position our investments. Most of the time, basic economic theory applies. Price is a function of demand and supply in the market. So the same thing applies to real estate. It's also a function of demand and it's also a function of supply. However, there's one thing I would love to caution, is that this is from a rudimentary point of view. It's not the same as producing, let's say, an iPhone, right? Because an iPhone, the components in terms of the prices, they're quite fixed. Yes, maybe there's chip shortages, it may go up a bit here and there. But for real estate, it's a little different. Supply comes in different forms because let's say I'm a developer or we are a developer. What is the largest cost from a developer's perspective? It's the land. And land pricing is consistently changing over time. And therefore, Singapore's real estate is also very much a function of demand and supply, but also very supply-led. That means supply actually leads the price point in the market in terms of the transactions and the price point it transacts at. All right, so I'll talk about demand first. If we look at the core central region, which include premium areas like District 9, 10, 11, and other segments of the industry itself, or at least the real estate market, we have seen from a more macro perspective from 2016 all the way until 2021, quite a strong demand in terms of the uptrend. And we are only in the third quarter of 2021, at least the data that we've extracted is until the third quarter of 2021. So it has outperformed most of the other years. And in essence, demand is relatively strong. So if I'm to go into a more micro element of the CCR demand itself, transactions are really strong. So I take 2019 all the way until third quarter 2021. And if I look at the average number of quarterly transacted units for 2019, which is pre-pandemic, we're actually transacting about 750 odd so units in that per quarter in 2019. And if we extrapolate it to the post-circuit breaker, which is after this quarter here, actually every quarter last year and even this year, post-circuit breaker, exceeds the average transacted units per quarter in 2019. So we have far exceeded that. Our volume exceeded pre-pandemic levels. And from this, we can tell it's on a steady uptrend also. All right, so going quicker into the numbers, more from a chart point of view, I talk about the supply. So back to basics, demand and also supply. This is the entire Singapore market. If you look at the unsold stock that we have at this point of time over here, we are at almost an all-time low of 15,000 units. And that's when we see individuals actually coming into the market, or these developers coming into the market to replenish their land bank, to replenish their cash flow, at least to deploy their cash flow also. If you look at this chart, usually is supply goes down, price goes up. But there's one part that we see is that supply goes up here and prices go up also. So it's very unique, right? So it goes down to this point that I want to bring about, the first bullet point. Prices increase despite unsold stock increasing. It's because Singapore's market is a fairly supply-led market. Okay, take for example, I have a piece of land, right? The land tender goes out, it goes up in price. The next land tender will have to go out also. And how do they value that land? Valuation is an art, it's also a science. So from a science perspective, they have to do comparable. And the nearest comparable will be the most recent land sales, right? So from that perspective, each land sale usually affects another plot of land nearby, and that's how they slowly build on the momentum of prices going upwards. And from a general sense, other than the lumpiness of the global financial crisis in 2008, 2009 or so, most of the peaks actually increase beyond the previous peak. And this is why this is also a function of valuation. It's also a function of the market being supply-led. The more you release into the market, developers have to sell at a higher price because that's their cost. They have to break even at least. So they have to sell at a higher price. The next land tender comes up at a higher price, it goes higher and higher. But I think in recent times, the government is controlling it very well. So all the cooling measures are in place to ensure that the market is a sustainable market, right? It's able to sustain itself in a longer period of time. Yeah, well, sorry, a lot of things to say. So the next thing is that the last point, you see this is the bubble here. What will happen to prices when units sold is decreasing? Likely more may come into the market, more land will be redeployed into the market, en bloc will pick up again, and we start to see a slow movement of prices upwards. That's our house view of things. Holding constant that the market is still okay in terms of the macro environment. And now if we really dial back into the CCR, the core central region, the luxury market, from 2016, okay, let's say from 2018 all the way until third quarter of 2021, every year it decreases by around maybe from 2018 to 2019, 3%, and then it drops in terms of the unsold stock, it drops by 1.4%. But this year, just 3 quarters into the year, it dropped by about 10%, 10 to 11%. So in terms of the pickup rate, the demand, the absorption rate of the market is actually quite strong this year. So if I really want to talk about supply, inventory, if you look at the core central region itself, the inventory as of third quarter 2021, we have about 6,900 units or so. And the new sale rate that we have is about, for the past year, 1 year itself, it's about 2,000 units. So if we use as a simple mathematics, just to put as a ratio, number of years to clear, assuming we have the same sales rate moving forward, it's about 3.2 years. And in the historical average from 2010 to 2020, it's between 2.3 to 15.7. So we are on the lower range of the historical average in terms of the number of years to clear the units. And if I want to further extrapolate this number moving forward, looking at this is upcoming inventory, this existing inventory. So the upcoming inventory that we see here, based on in-house forecast, it's about maybe 400 units this year, maybe about 900 plus units. So it adds up to be 1,300 units in between this quarter and the next year itself. That translates to CCR supply of new supply about 87 units per month. And if you use the existing new sales rate from October 2020 to September 2021, the demand is about 178 units per month. So at this point of time, as where we stand, excuse me, the core central area demand actually can absorb whichever supply or whatever supply that's coming up, at least in the next year or so itself. So from a market point of view, absorption rate is rather healthy. And if I want to look at bigger units now, in just the third quarter of 2021, there are many notable transactions. They range from very expensive $35 million properties. I think if we go past the third quarter in November, there were even larger transactions. I will showcase one later. So about close to $1 billion luxury non-landed homes were transacted in the third quarter of 2021. And it's quite a strong number in terms of the liquidity being transacted in the market. So the movement of liquidity is there. Because when somebody sells, it frees up liquidity. Liquidity is being pumped into somewhere else also. One example taken from the Business Times. This is like what we mentioned, the 4-bedroom and as mentioned by Shuntak. So it went up at about 6,000 about close to 6,000 per square foot. And I think from the article, we can see that it's likely to a foreigner. So foreign individuals are buying into the very high-end real estate market of Singapore. This is one example. The next example that we have is this Taiwanese family that bought the entire so-called development. Actually, it was transacted by our company, Huttons also. So these units, it's very rare to come by that somebody would transact the entire development. However, one thing to note is these are foreigners also. Means foreign money, and these foreigners see Singapore as an attractive proposition, whether is it from political stability in terms of holding the value of their asset and their wealth, to many other differentiated reasons that they may have. And you know, this property, the whole building that can be purchased, or at least the whole development that is purchased, Is it the last of its kind? It's actually a very rare thing to see this nowadays. As you all know, developments or these developers in recent times, they have a 5-year time period that they usually have to sell their developments within. If not, they'll be slapped on with ABSD emission issues. They also have QC if you're a listed developer. So the penalty that they have to face if they don't clear the units, it's very high. So usually they will try to clear as much as they can within the 5-year period, unless they have they have the ability to hold, or this land is then permission, or at least the permissions were obtained in the past. So the availability of developments like Eden, where the whole block was sold, is actually quite rare, because nowadays 1 or 2 of the units will be sold. It's unlikely to sell the whole thing together. And moving on to the more bite-sized ones in the luxury segment, we also have Jervois mentioned that sold extremely well. I think close 90%, 99%, almost fully sold as of today. Maybe they left 1 unit. It's by a single family office, Kinman Realty, and it was managed by Roxy Pacific. So the demand in terms of retail demand into the luxury segment, the more bite sales retail demand is also quite strong. So from 2 fronts, one is a huge, 1 whole floor plate, huge 4-bedroom houses, all the way to the retail smaller units, 2-bedroom, 1-bedroom, etc. The demand is still quite strong and sustained at this point of time. This is out of the 3rd quarter. It was a recent unit. It's Nasim at Nasim also. So 75 million for for 1 unit in terms of it's a huge price to pay. It also passes, or at least surpasses, James Dyson's one. So it shows that I will not say it's a huge price to pay, but I would say it's very attractive. I mean, it's a good price achieved, meaning that people overseas are actually looking at Singapore's asset as a really very attractive class, that they're willing to put 75 million into a penthouse in the heart of our Orchard area itself. So very good demand from foreigners, also strong demand from locals itself. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we see a lot of foreign buyers coming to the market. But if I want to put it into a table form, numbers of foreigners coming in, about 25% more foreigners bought properties in 2021 and 9 months after 2021 versus 2020, right? So you can see who are our primary buyers in terms of the primary foreigners buying the Singapore market. The Malaysians, the United States, Indonesia, India, and of course, China. Why I didn't highlight China is because I want to talk about the next thing. 4 out of the 5 top countries that we see over here are currently VTL states, or at least VTL countries. That means you can take a note. January to September 2021, there were no VTL so-called routes being applied, and these were the number of transactions already. So as of recent times, we opened many VTL lanes, and 4 of these countries are within the new VTL lanes. So I think from an intuitive point of view, it is likely to boost transactions, at least in the property market, in the few months or at least next year. Chinese, we don't have a VTL of them, but to be honest, Chinese citizens, or at least people from China, they can come to Singapore. They're under category 1. They don't really have to quarantine and take a swab. The only issue they may face is when they go back to China. All right, so these are some of the news from the VTL states. Germany and Brunei, actually, I just came back from Germany, beautiful country. And then the expansion of the VTL schemes, it's actually very simple. When I just had to take a PCR test there, at least for Germany itself at the time. When I came back to Singapore, I took a PCR test, and then I was free to go anywhere I want. We are also opening more VTL lanes with Europe. I think of recent times, countries like I think France, the Netherlands, the UK, of which Singapore also has a close so-called economic relationship with, and Australia and Switzerland are also in there. More countries are included. This is in October. Australia and Switzerland, especially Australia, because we have a lot of students and a lot of human traffic in terms of people. There are a lot of Singaporeans in Australia also. And the next thing, I think they're aiming for more VTLs with ASEAN countries. And that will be the key. And if not many people know, our biggest trading partner is actually Malaysia. And this would be the highlight of things to come in terms of boosting up the economy. And we're going to open a VTL with KL, or at least Malaysia, And the next thing to look out for will be the land border crossings. Yep. So, one more country, Indonesia was added also. Indonesia is, in terms of economic relationships, very strong. Currently, we open unilaterally, but I think talks are in the way to allow us Singaporeans to go to Indonesia. All right, so back to this same chart that I showed earlier. All these numbers, at least the top 4 of the 5 countries there, this was the number of transacted units without VTL. So with the VTL, what would the transaction numbers be? I'm not able to commit to you a number, but intuitively, likely they may add to the overall demand that we will see next year. So from a CCR luxury market perspective, it's quite strong. So in conclusion, buyers, they are from all walks of life. For the non-landed residential in the CCR, we have more smaller units in terms of the more retail units for locals that actually invest their money. We have the huge floor plate units that locals are buying also, but we see a lot more foreigners purchasing in this area, which means an influx of monetary flow into Singapore and liquidity. You put it through the multiplier, this allows the economy to benefit in more ways than one. So Singapore itself, core central region, very attractive to foreigners, very attractive to locals. Likely moving forward in the future, we would see the sustainability of its value and its price point of the transaction also. All right, I think that should be the end of my section. I will pass over the time hand over the time to my colleague, Mr. John Liu. He will explain one of the projects that we find rather interesting and rather compelling in terms of its proposition as an investment vehicle or even an own stay vehicle. Maybe I can touch on one point before I pass over to him. Many people, when they purchase properties, it's not all about the price point, it's also about the exit of a property. So, because when you sell eventually, when you buy a property, eventually you want to sell. And that is something to consider also. So properties which are extremely close to schools nowadays, 1 km to schools, are really attractive because in the past, we can rely on being an alumni to actually get our children into schools and, based on the phases of the primary school registration. But nowadays, it's not even enough. You have to have both. So you have to be close to the school also. And in terms of the areas around primarily schools that quite attractive to a lot of Singaporeans, property assets around there starting to be of more value also. So or at least more looked at by parents or at least by families looking to register their children in certain schools of their choice. So with that to end, I'll pass the time over to my colleague, Mr. John Liu. So John, over to you. Thank you.
Hi, thanks so much, Juyong. My name is John. I'm one of the ICs for Atelier. So without any further ado, let me share with you what Atelier is all about. Now, before we actually go into it, Atelier has a tagline which states that where independence isn't just a state of mind, it's home. What this actually means is that it's trying to tell you that every single home is uniquely for your own individuality, as well as how you will be able to create your own memories with yourself and your loved ones. So let me just share with you what Atelier is all about. First thing first, beginning with the location. Now, the location of Atelier is actually located in the core District 9 CCR region, where the renowned shopping belt Orchard is as well. However, away from the bustle and hustles of all the shopping malls, there is a part of District 9 that is actually more serene and tranquil, that's closer to nature, that we all know. Botanic Gardens is there, Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, and this is actually, there is also an upcoming new feature which I will share with you very shortly as well. Before that, let's have a look at further on the location of Atelier. Now, right next to Atelier is Novina's Medical Center, okay, Novina's Medical Hub. You will have not only access to normal conveniences in your daily lives, but you will have access to some of the world's most renowned medical facilities as well. This makes it very ideal for yourself to be in a position of such whereby your property is ideally situated accessibility-wise, okay? There's also an array of good schools that you can have for your own selection. Within the 1 kilometer radius, you have ACS Barker and ACS Junior, together with SJI as well. And right outside the 2 kilometer, right within the 2 kilometer radius, sorry, you still have Singapore Chinese Girls' School. There was an article recently in the Straits Times which denoted and highlighted how important or how much value you can actually add to your property if you're actually staying close to popular good schools as well. And some of the pointers are already highlighted over here. Artilia is one where it enjoys not just one, but three. In actual fact, there's one more that you can't actually see over here, which is St. Margaret's Primary Girls' School. Okay, so you have a choice of four top schools for selection. Now, with the mention of the Green Corridor, this is actually attuned and in line with how I previously mentioned that there was a part of District 9 that was closer towards the greenery. So you have Botanic Gardens, you have the Bukit Timah Nature Reserve, and you have the upcoming Green Corridor transformation. Now, the Green Corridor transformation is actually a link that will be connecting the railway Green Corridor all the way down to Kallang Riverside. And as you can see from the artist's impression over here, there is an elevated sky bridge that's actually being built for joggers and cyclists alike, for to just stroll by in the evening, so this is something that is actually much looked forward to by all the residents around the area. And definitely it's going to be much pleasing and a feature that I think is going to be very attractive as well. This is actually scheduled for completion in 2025, in line with Artilia. So why are they doing all this? Currently, right now, we all know Singapore as a garden city. So they are taking it one step further to try to align and beautify Singapore central region so that it becomes what they call a city in a garden, a city in nature. So these are all plans that have already undergone and started from probably the beginning of last year and will be completed very soon. Okay, moving forward, I want to share with you the concept of how Artilia was actually conceptualized. Now, the architect actually shared with us that there were three main characteristics that they wanted to highlight. A development is always, I personally believe, an extension of an individual purchaser's character or personality. So how is it going to be different from any others? Now, the three main distinctive features were that they wanted distinction, identity, and craft experience. So distinction, literally, if you look at Artilia, it's a very bold, new, modern concept building that is of a different color scheme. The whole of Newton skyline is more or less very white. All the developments are actually in a very white or cream color scheme. Artilia is actually a very bold statement which utilizes the steel and bronze concept to help it stand out, to make it an iconic landmark. So you will actually have this bold development, okay, of its own individual color scheme standing right there in future. Artilia also has two distinct lantern features in its arrival plaza. Now, lanterns are like beacons of light, and the main concept behind it is, for example, after a hard, long day's work, what the lanterns are supposed to do is to call and welcome you home. So as you're driving along the road on the way home, you can actually see your building from far, and these two beacons of light are welcoming you home. It will give you a sense that the day is over, it's time to get back and relax and spend time with your family and loved ones. And now this is actually something that you can actually feel when you drive into the main arrival plaza. Having said that as well, there is actually a green belt of hanging plants that is actually built around the multi-story car park, as you can see from the diagram over here as well. The multi-story car park is 5 stories high. So your lantern ceiling height elevation is literally 5 stories high as well. This adds grandeur to the main arrival hall. And on top of that, you'll be wowed with the technological features that Artilia has. Technology has actually become a part of our lives. Okay, so what actually happens is that moving forward, I do believe that all residential units in Singapore will slowly integrate all these technological features as some of our smart offices nowadays already have. So first thing first, like for example, if you're driving home, previously, if you're driving a vehicle, you have to register your IU unit that has to be captured to grant you access into the compound. For Artilia, instead of having the IU recognition, now they will actually go by car plate recognition. If you are one of the guests coming in, you'll be sent a QR code from one of the owners so that you can actually ease yourself into the compound at the security guard by showing the QR code. An owner, for example, coming home will not really need to tap a security swipe pass whatsoever, as well as there will be facial recognition from the lobby. So it scans and recognizes your face, you enter the lift and you go straight up to your unit. The lobby is also contactless nowadays, so there's no buttons that you have to press or doors that you have to pull open. It's just at a wave and the doors will slide open for you. This actually, to me, I feel is moving forward, something that we will always enjoy. But Atelier is one of the first of its kind. We are already familiar with how there's Bluetooth aircon control features together with water heater control features that you can access from your smartphone these days. But I think moving forward into the 22nd century, this is just going to be a normal way of life. So Atelier is one of the first few that will actually have it. I would also like to share the number of bedroom mix that is available. So I'll just skim very quickly forward right now. Atelier comprises of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom types. So if I were to go back to the 1 bedroom layout, you can see that it's an open kitchen concept, and from the minute you enter, you have quite a wide living and dining space as well. So 1 bedroom units for investors will actually be quite sufficient for your tenants to actually just enjoy their own private spaces. And at the same time, this space is just sufficient for it to be for you to build a very cozy little home for yourself. The 2 bedroom units, however, for example, are slightly bigger, and they range approximately from 872 square feet to 915 square feet, which makes it ideal for newlywed couples or even young families as well, because the bedrooms, as you can see, is huge, and you've got an adjoining bedroom as well. Now, I'm going to share one feature that is actually a promotional feature towards the end of this presentation of what we can actually do right now that is very beneficial to a lot of owners. Moving forward, a 3 bedroom, okay? A 3 bedroom upgrade will be significantly grand for any homeowners coming into Atelier over here. Why do I say so? It's because the living and dining is already 20 square meters. You've got this long kitchen island concept that you will see a slide later on as well. And your master bedroom, okay, it actually boosts for him and for her sink that you can only find normally in 4 bedroom units. Moving across to the 4 bedrooms, we do not have any penthouses in Atelier because there is no need for it. The 4 bedrooms are an exclusive. There's only 8 units available, and the size of it is slightly under 1,500 square feet, which makes it ample and luxurious in today's property market. Okay. Your finishings will range from Jessie Matte Black series from the sanitary ware, which is actually one of the high-end cream of the crop kind of luxury sanitary wares. And it's not only fitted throughout the toilet, but however, it's fitted throughout the entire unit, which means that your kitchen will also be having the Matte Black series tags. Home appliances wise will be by Dietrich, which is actually a very strong and good German brand. Okay. Flooring scheme wise, there will be 2 kind of color schemes. One is the warm and what they call the cool marble scheme. Now the warm is actually more of a cream color scheme that's available for the 1 and 2 bedrooms. And the cool color scheme is actually more of a gray, cool kind of color scheme that is available for the 3 and 4 bedrooms. Now this is the kitchen island concept that I was actually mentioning about for the 3 bedrooms. So you can actually see that it's a very nice, long, elegant, engineered stone kitchen island top that you can sort of enclose up as well. If you do a lot of heavy cooking at home, it is an option for you to play around with. Okay, I'm just going to go forward very quickly right now because this actually is the promotion that I wanted to highlight. The next 8 units will get to enjoy an additional 5% off the purchase price, and you get what they call a customized layout alteration. So things like this, for example, if you do not want to have an open kitchen concept, you can actually put a request through to have it enclosed without any further cost. Now, if I were to go back to the color schemes as well, for the next 8 units, you will have the selection to choose which color schemes are available. Otherwise, it will just be fixed at 1 and 2 bedrooms being the warm color scheme, and the 3 and 4 bedrooms being fixed at the cool color scheme. The customized layout alterations as well will include significant changes that you might want to do for the layout of the whole entire unit, if it is possible. Developers like Bukit Sambal, what they're doing right now is they're giving you the option, okay? They're trying to say, for example, this is something that we are willing to listen to you as a buyer. If this is your requirement and this is your need, then we can try and do it if it is possible. If you want to alter the layout whatsoever as well, let us know and we can consider it. Not a lot of developers are putting this out in the market right now, so this is something that is definitely a note to make note of. Okay, without any further, so after that, without any further ado, I've come to the end of my whole presentation already. I look very forward to meeting all of you and hearing from all of you. Thank you so much, and I hope that to see you soon at the Atelier. Thank you.